Good evening. I'm Nushan Vitarana from IEEE Nuclear and Plasma Science Society, University of Moratuwa. Welcome to the introductory session of IEEE Nuclear and Plasma Science Society, University of Moratuwa. Marking another milestone in the history of our society, we are ready to see the world of nuclear and plasma science through the eyes of expertise. Also, you can ask any question related to the subject from an expert and clarify your knowledge. With that, on behalf of the society, I would like to invite the advisor of IEEE Nuclear and Plasma Science Society, University of Moratuwa, Dr. Tushara Damayanti, to welcome the gathering.
Good morning, Dr. Stephen, and good evening to everyone joining in Sri Lanka. So I am Tushara Ratnayaka, Chapter Advisor of IEEE NPSS, Nuclear and Plasma Science Society, Student Branch Chapter of University of Moratuwa in Sri Lanka. So this is the first session of the newly formed NPSS Student Branch Chapter of University of Moratuwa. So I warmly welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Stephen Gold, for this invaluable session on behalf of IEEE NPSS Student Branch Chapter of University of Moratuwa. So it's my great pleasure today to introduce him to the audience. Dr. Stephen has received his PhD in physics from the University of Maryland in 1978 and worked at the US Naval Research Laboratory for the next 37 years, retiring in 2015 as a senior scientist for radiation generation physics. At Naval Research Lab, he was the principal investigator for a series of advanced accelerator projects. He has published 70 referred journal papers and 115 conference proceedings, and holds 6 US patents and 2 statutory invention registrations. Since his retirement, he has continued to consult in areas of plasma science and accelerator physics. In IEEE, he has served on various nuclear and plasma science society committees over the past 30 years and has served NPSS Administrative Committee and Executive Committee and also IEEE Fellow Committee. He was an associate editor of the IEEE Transactions on Plasma Science for 20 years. He is currently a member of the NPSS Administrative Committee, serves as Secretary of the NPSS Plasma Science and Application Committee, and is the NPSS Chapter Coordinator with responsibility for the 25 NPSS section chapters and 17 student branch chapters around the world. He is a Life Fellow of the IEEE and a Life Member and Fellow of the American Physical Society and received the 2008 IEEE NPSS Richard F. Shea Distinguished Member Award for outstanding contributions to the IEEE Nuclear NPSS. He guided our students to form the IEEE NPSS student branch at our university as well. Therefore, he is the ideal person to introduce IEEE NPSS to us at the first webinar session of student branch chapter of University of Moratuwa. So without taking much time, I invite respectfully Dr. Stephen Gold to start the session.
Okay, hello everyone. Let me begin by sharing my screen and then I will try to talk at that point. Okay, so you should be able to see my first slide now, my title slide. This is supposed to be an introduction to the IEEE and the NPSS and to our chapters program, the NPSS chapters program. So I'm going to go over some of all these areas here within the context of a reasonably short talk. I'm very happy to be here and I'm very glad you invited me to give this talk. It also inspired me to put these slides together and they perhaps I'll be able to use them now for some other talks as well. So anyway, I'm Good morning or good evening to you, and let me get started. Now one second here. Before starting my talk, I wanted to make a small virtual presentation to Randima of our IEEE chapter founders plaque. This was actually a wooden plaque that Randima received a few months ago after founding the chapter, but the whole idea is to be able to present these publicly, and I'm not sure we could do that at your end, and there's no conferences nearby, so let me make this virtual presentation now. It says the IEEE Nuclear and Plasma Science Society honors BVD Randima Hasanthi as the founding chair of the NPSS, University of Moratuwa, Sri Lanka Student Branch Chapter, established 31 July 2020, a few months back, and it's signed by our society president, Ron Shrimp. So with that done, and congratulations to Randima, let me get into the heart of this talk. First, what is the IEEE? Well, to begin with, it stands for Institute of Electrical Electronics Engineers. I think their official name is now just the IEEE because it looks shorter and more professional perhaps, but it really covers, or at least originally covered, just electrical engineering and electronics engineering. But it has become the largest worldwide association of technical professionals with about 420,000 members. This number is as of the end of last year, covering more than 160 countries. Its objective are educational and technical advancement in electrical and electronics engineering, telecommunications, computer engineering, and allied disciplines. And allied disciplines has broadened it substantially. For instance, you wouldn't normally think of nuclear and plasma sciences as electrical engineering, but it is part of a very broad array of different disciplines that are now under the IEEE umbrella. The IEEE is a non-profit and non-political organization, so it exists in most of the countries of the world and plays no role in the politics of those countries. It's simply an independent scientific technical organization encompassing many societies. A few more figures of merit. It hosts about 1,800, more than 1,800 annual conferences around the world, and truly around the world, not just in the US. It publishes 200 magazines and journals. It has 1,300 active standards, which are made use of by industry. And there are more than 5 million technical documents currently explored. So it's a rather large organization. Most of my work is in one little piece of it, as I'll explain. But I also want to show the bigger picture. So these are a few statistics of the society, the NPSS that is, and of the entire IEEE. I put our society, the NPSS, in red. So in 2019, the IEEE had, at least officially as of the end of the year, as of December 31st of last year, 419,007 members in more than 160 countries. And about half of them outside the US. Remember, this organization originally was founded in the US. So it's become a worldwide organization. And about half of the members belong to one or more societies. You don't have to belong to a society to become part of the IEEE. And our small society has about 1% of the IEEE members, a little more than 4,000 as of that date. The IEEE, among those 419,000 members, about 76,000 are undergraduate student members. And of those, about a little more than 1,000 belong to our society. So that's a little more than 1%. The IEEE divides the world into 10 geographic units, as I'll show them, called regions, and then further divides it into sections. So there are now, or at least as of the end of last year, there were 342 different sections. And of course, one of them is the Sri Lanka section in which you are. Technically, the society is broken up, the IEEE is broken up to 39 societies covering different areas, and 7 technical councils, which are just organizations representing several societies that go into new fields of interest. So those societies basically constitute the fields of interest of the IEEE. And as you know, mine is the Nuclear and Plasma Science Society. In these sections and associated with societies, there are 1,800 and some section chapters. These are local chapters that are tied to one or more societies and exist in one of the sections. So they basically are a way to bring people together at a local level that don't involve going to sort of international conferences in a particular area of interest. There are 3,400 student branches, of which University of Moratuwa has one of those. And in those student branches, there are about 2,600 student branch chapters as of the end of last year. And 17 of those right now, maybe 15 at the end of last year, are associated with our society. And you're one of the most recent. So now look at the worldwide picture. The IEEE divides the world into 10 regions. The first 6 historically are in the US, as you can see here. The 7th is Canada. The 8th is a rather large region consisting of Europe, the former Soviet Union, the Middle East, as well as Africa. It's a very large region geographically. It's basically everything that isn't somewhere else. So it may eventually be divided into further regions. Region 9 is South America, and Region 10 is all of Asia, edging on into the former Soviet Union, but including China, Manchuria, and so forth. Looking at members per region, well, this is the upper graph here is the members of the IEEE in all the regions. You can see regions 1 through 7 are about half of the IEEE, and region 10, where you are, is a little more than 25%. Region 9 is the smallest of the worldwide regions, even though it's fairly big geographically. And looking at our society, the NPSS, well, we're also, of course, centered in North America, but really more than half of our society is outside of the US. And in this case, Region 10 is our fastest growing region. It's actually 1/3 of the society at present. Now, the IEEE, as I said, is a very big society. I can only talk about a little bit of it, but the bottom line is there is an organization that runs it, and it begins with the members. The whole superstructure of the society is built on elections starting with the members. So everything under there, and all this part, which I'll go through fairly quickly, begins with elections by members who elect people at low levels, and those people elect other people, and eventually elect the board of directors of the entire IEEE. The IEEE is mostly volunteers and mostly just members. And there's a professional staff living here under the executive director of about 1,000 people. They run the journals, at least the publishing side of the journals. They run all the superstructure of the IEEE under the direction of the board of directors, who are volunteers. These are all unpaid volunteers. So under the board of directors, there are a number of boards. Members in Geographic Activities Board covers all the membership, as well as everything that takes place around the world in the regions and the sections. Technical Activity Board has 10 divisions that match the 10 regions. So societies are grouped in regions. And 39 societies and 6 councils all are part of these 10 regions. And of course, my society, which is where I hang out, is in this box here. There's also a Publications Board, an Educational Activities Board, a Standards Activity, and something called IEEE USA, which really focuses on what goes on in the United States. It historically is part of this structure because the IEEE started here. Oops. Sorry. And bottom line is we finally get the chapters and student chapters, which are administratively governed by the sections and councils, but are technically linked to societies and technical councils. So here are the chapters and student chapters. So this is the top level web page of our society, Nuclear and Plasma Science Society. You can see here information on, you can find links to our committees, our conferences, our awards, our chapters, our Distinguished Lecturers Program, our publications, and other parts of our community. Students are buried under community. This is a list of our forthcoming conferences. These are more links to the information. And finally, this explains to some extent what the society is. So I wanted to bring that out and put it in letters you can read online. What is the NPSS? It is people working together using science and technology, expanding industry, and furthering people's careers. Our fields include sort of nuclear sciences and engineering, as well as plasma science and engineering. My interest is in plasma science, we'll start at the top here. Nuclear science includes, among other things, radiation detection and monitoring instrumentation, radiation effects on semiconductors and other materials, nuclear biomedical applications, particle accelerators, and instrumentation for nuclear power generation. These are all the nuclear side of society, encompassed in about 5 technical committees. And the plasma science and engineering side is plasma dynamics, fusion, plasma sources, relativistic electron beams, laser plasma interactions, diagnostics, and solid-state plasmas. That's just a brief summary of what's involved. Now, if you look at the organization of the society, it's governed by an ADCOM, administrative committee that pulls it all together. This shows what the society looks like. Green, by the way, would be voting members here. Those are the people who actually vote on the society business. So the officers are the president, currently Ron Shrimp, the vice president, currently Stephen Michael, the past president, treasurer, the secretary, the editors of all our journals, and I'll talk about these journals a little bit more later, as well as our newsletter and our web. A lot of functional committees that carry out the business of society, including awards, chapters. Again, this is the committee I chair, communications, conferences, distinguished lecturers, evaluation, and so forth. And you can all read these later or look on our website to find them. But we do have 8 technical committees. I'm just giving you the acronyms here so I can read the titles in the next slide or two. But this is CAMPS, FTC, medical imaging, PAST, which is particle accelerators, PSAC, which is my part of it, pulse power, radiation effects, and radiation instrumentation. So each of these has a chair who belongs to the governing board of our society, the ADCOM, as well as some elected members. And the elected members are distributed by, in essence, the size of each piece of the society based on a poll that we do every 5 years. So again, here's PSAC. We have 3 members out of these 16 on the board. And I've been in this slot several times. I've been elected to this position 3 times over the years. And finally, we have a liaison to other parts of the IEEE and beyond. And I'll just skip over those for now because of other things to talk about. So what does the NPSS do? Well, this is a partial list. We organize and support a lot of conferences, symposia, and workshops each year around the whole world. So these, as you will see, are not based just in the US or just in Europe. They're actually spread out worldwide. We publish 4 transactions. These are our scientific journals, 2 of them in collaboration with other societies. And I'll talk about those a bit as I move ahead. We recognize the accomplishments of our members and by giving technical awards each year, about 30 of them altogether, to recognize major contributions to our field. And I'll give you a short list of some of those, but there are far too many to spend time listing today. We publish a newsletter that reaches all of our members, and you should be, as members, getting it 4 times a year. I think it still comes worldwide in print edition. We provide access to our publications using IEEE Explore online, and as a member, you get free access to anything the NPSS has in IEEE Explore. You don't have to pay for that. We support humanitarian projects around the world. One big site is in India. And we allow members to get involved in the affairs of the IEEE and the NPSS and to help direct them further promote our professions. Basically, this is an avenue that provides input from the members to these technical areas using society as the medium. So now let me just talk about the technical committees fairly briefly. These are the 8 technical committees, and I've listed alongside them their principal conference. They may be involved in many conferences, but they have one main conference that they run. The Computer Application of Nuclear and Plasma Science Society, CAMPS, runs a real-time conference. It involves control systems for large experiments and things of that sort. This year, unfortunately, it's a virtual conference. I believe it had been intended to be in Vietnam this year, but they had to cancel it, became virtual. Radiation instrumentation and nuclear medical imaging every year have a joint conference. It's called the NSS-MIC, Nuclear Science Symposium Medical Imaging Conference. This year it was virtual. Next year it's supposed to be in Yokohama, Japan, provided that's possible. Otherwise, maybe virtual again. Radiation Effects has the Nuclear and Space Radiation Effects Conference. Look at radiation effects typically in semiconductors, which is important for satellites and so forth. Once again, this is a virtual conference. Last year, the conference was in Hawaii. And I don't recall where it's going in 2021, but basically you can look at our website and find all this information. Particle Accelerators has another technical committee. IPAC, the National Particle Accelerator Conference, is theirs. This year virtual, and actually it was an NAPAC this year, but we won't go into complications. Next year it's slated to be in Brazil. Pulse Power Science Technology and Fusion Technology are 2 separate conferences, but next year it's a joint conference. That will be in Denver. And finally, my technical committee, Plasma Science and Applications, The ICOPS this year was going to be in Singapore, but again is a virtual conference taking place in a few weeks. Not too late to register for that one. And next year it's supposed to be in the Tahoe region in the United States. And I just thought I'd show you one quick picture from a conference. I selected a picture with one particular reason. You can see a poster being presented by Sama Mahmoud Balouza, who is a member of the NPSS Alexandria University Student Branch Chapter, and one of the founding members of that chapter. And this is from ICOPS 2015 in Turkey. And she attended this conference using a student travel grant that our conference gives out every year to some number of students to represent their presentation at our conference. This, by the way, is one of the past presidents of the NPSS, Bob Rajnovsky, who was talking to her at her poster. Okay, we also technically co-sponsor a vast number of conferences. It means we have no financial interest in putting them on. We simply provide some scientific expertise, and this is just a brief list of them. RADx, BEAMS, ICOLEPS, ANIMA, SINT, SORMA. You can find all this information on our website as well. Okay, so now let me move to another main thing we do. One of the major things we do is publish. Our publications are highly ranked and provide access to state-of-the-art research in our various technical areas of interest. Our two main journals traditionally were the IEEE Transactions of Nuclear Science and IEEE Transactions of Plasma Science. Those cover all of our fields of interest, but in addition, we are a co-sponsor of the IEEE Transactions of Medical Imaging, and most recently, a new journal we set up called Transactions of Radiation and Plasma Medical Sciences. We set this up basically to isolate our medical work from all the other work we could do so that this could become part of medical databases for doctors to be able to access. And as I already said, if you're a member of the NPSS, you get unlimited access to all of these journals, as well as the oral conference proceedings online, which is very handy. Even if you're working for someone who gives you access, you can use this wherever you are in the world or at home. And I'm not sure if your university provides this access, but you have it just as a society member. And as I said, we give many awards. One thing that all scientific societies do is to try to recognize accomplishments of their members. Over the years, we've built up a large panoply of awards. We give 30 different awards and grants for starting with student members and one through lifetime achievement awards for longtime members who are approaching retirement. And these are all awards judged by peers, basically judged by committees of scientists who are experts in their fields. At the society level, we have a Merit Award, an Early Achievement Award. This is an award for contribution to computational nuclear and plasma sciences, the Burzel Award, and the Christensen Award for contributions to experimental nuclear and plasma sciences. So these are some of the NPSS level awards. Every technical committee, and we have 8 of them, also has awards, and I just listed 2 that our technical committee does. Plasma Science and Applications Award, and the Igor Alexev Outstanding Student in Plasma Science Award. So all the other 7 technical committees have similar awards, as I said, adding up to more than 30, and you can find these on our website as well. But some of them are student awards, which in principle you're eligible for right now as students, but of course it's based on your research, more typically to go to grad students. Enough about the overall society in IEEE. I want to talk about our chapters program in the remainder of this talk. So where do chapters fit in the IEEE structure? I've sort of already showed this, but there are 2 basic lines starting from the board of directors down through technical activities and members of geographic activities. Through societies, through sections, we find chapters, which are in sections but linked to societies. Also under sections are the university student branches, and then linking a student branch to a society, the student branch chapters. And of course, that's where you are in this organization structure. So what are student branch chapters? I've already sort of said it, but they're basically student-run organizations that are formed within an IEEE student branch at a college or university. They're student-run. You actually have a faculty advisor, but your officers are all students, elected by students. Once you form a student branch chapter, by definition, all the students in the university that are members of the society are also members of the chapter. So you don't have to become a member of a chapter. If there's a chapter and you're a society member, you're part of that chapter. And how do you set up a chapter? Well, you already have done this. You sort of know this. You need a student branch. You can't create a student branch chapter by IEEE rules without a student branch. A petition signed by 6 society members, one of whom is the first chair, which was Randima. You need a faculty advisor, of course. And then there's a quick approval process. Student branch council has to approve it, the society and the region have to approve it as well. So this can all go very quickly. Once you start the petition, it can all be done in a few weeks. And why are student branch chapters important? Why does our society pursue developing more and more student chapters? Well, they operate largely independently of society. Your student chapter decides what to do, but you're working in our area of interest and we support you however we can. What you do is to sponsor student activities, including lectures, such as this lecture. You could, in looking at what other chapters have done, you can sponsor special courses, workshops, excursions, social gatherings, or whatever is of interest to you. Basically, you have a carte blanche to put together activities of interest to your own community. You also involve students in chapter activities and provide leadership opportunities, and they're very valuable. So becoming a chapter officer, taking responsibility for chapter activities is the path to learning how to be a leader and how to pursue your career as you go forward, wherever your career takes you. And you also help attract new students to society by inviting them to meetings, perhaps distributing literature, and Randima actually has some literature that we sent to her. So once you have in-person meetings, that may happen. And providing an introduction to the IEEE and our society. Those are all very valuable things. And that's why I think the student branch chapters are one of our more important activities. And of course, students are the future of the NPSS, so you are the start of the process of being an active contributor in our society and beyond that. This is a map of our chapters around the world. I've already said, well, I haven't said perhaps, we have 25 section chapters and 17 student branch chapters. You can see a fair number of them are concentrated in the US and Canada, reasons 1 through 6 and 7, but they're spread around the world. Another concentration in Europe, Middle East and Africa, and then a whole lot in Asia as well. There you are, that's Sri Lanka. I believe I put it in the right place, right next to India. And these are all the student chapters we have around the world now, 17 of them. 5 are in the US, Michigan University, Michigan, Michigan State, San Diego, Texas Tech, and Vanderbilt. We have 1 in Central America, Costa Rica. You can see 2 in France, ISA Sapiro and Saint Etienne, Institute for Scientific, Aeronautics and Space, I believe is the French acronym here, as well as one at Alexandria University in Egypt. And finally, 7 in India, only room for their abbreviations as well as yours. And we're always trying to develop new ones. These are 3 locations where we're currently now trying to form new chapters. At the Wits University, University of Witwatersrand, something like that, in Johannesburg, South Africa, Aix-Marseille University in France, and finally Padua in Italy. So we're always trying to reach out for more. Excuse me. So this shows the history of the number of our chapters, student chapters around the world. You can see when I began taking charge of this program back in 2006, we had 14 section chapters and no student chapters. That number is now up to 25. It's hard to establish a new section chapter because we're a fairly small society and there are a lot of sections around the world, but we don't have much representation in most of them. Whereas other societies really are more worldwide. For instance, I'm going to show something in a few minutes from the Computer Society. They exist in practically every section in the world. And you can see our first student branch chapter was established in Alexandria, Egypt in 2013. And the number has slowly grown and then a couple of years ago began to increase much more rapidly, as you can see here. So at this point in 2020, we're up to 17 student chapters. And yours and the one in Sardinia in Italy, in India, are the 2 most recent ones. I borrowed this slide from a friend in the Industrial Application Society. So he's very proud that he's has more than 400 chapters split between student chapters and section chapters as shown here. And his is one of the bigger societies. We're about 3,000 members, his is about 16,000 members. course, industrial applications are much broader than nuclear applications. And so I took his slide. This is computer society, power and electronics, robotics and automation and communications. And I tacked on our society down here at 42. So there's a long tail to this distribution, having to do with societies that are much, much smaller than these 5 very large ones. And just for the record, here you are in the list of our student chapters. This information is all online. It's also in this presentation. And if you want to reach out to any of these other chapters for any joint activities, for instance, this is their contact information, where they are, and when their officer began, and the current chapter chair's name. Okay, so now what is our student chapters program? Well, just as a broad overview, we provide enthusiastic support for new and existing chapters by providing information, advice, and outreach. We award chapter founders plaques to recognize new chapters, as we've done in the case of your chapter. We have a very active Distinguished Lecturers program with lecturers covering a broad range of topics covering all the NPSS technical areas. And this is offered free to our chapters. We also offer financial support to our chapters based on some rules involving putting together a budget and costing out what you plan to do, of up to $500 a year, up to $1,000 for a new chapter. So you basically have to come up with a program that needs the money, and I guess until there are in-person activities, money probably is very important for virtual activities. We also support NPSS student memberships, which helps contribute to the student chapters. And you have our chapters webpage, newsletter articles, which you can publish in our newsletter, we hope you will, and our society Facebook page. Now going forward, I'm going to talk about a little bit about our Distinguished Lecturers program and about how we provide support for students. This is now a composite from our Distinguished Lecturers webpage. As you can see here, we have 34 lecturers currently listed. This is a part of the list starting with A. From all 8 technical societies, technical committees, and I counted them, there are 75 different lectures on offer here. And again, you just go to this webpage, click the Distinguished Lecturers link, and you'll find all this information, as well as how to contact these people. And you can just see, looking at the first few, nuclear fusion, laser-induced electron emission, let's see, two-dimensional material, well, this is all solid state. This is radiation effects, space and atmospheric radiation environment, semiconductors, impulse power. This is high power microwaves and gyrotrons. And it happens, I haven't hit much nuclear science here. That's an accident of the alphabetization by speaker. And just to show you an example of one, this is a lecture I gave at Texas Tech University a couple of years ago. And you can see, looking at this, that there's a requirement, if you remember this particular chapter, that you're at least 6 foot tall. I'm not exactly sure, I'm about 5'8", and they're all towering over me. So this was an unusual experience. But anyway, you can also nowadays only give lectures virtually, and that makes it a lot easier because we don't have very many lecturers in Asia, but anyone can talk to Asia if they're presenting a lecture virtually. Okay, now we talk about our student membership program. One of the things we like to do is promote student membership in our society. And one reason we want to do that is to support our chapters program, but of course we want to do it more generally as well. So we have 2 main programs that are contribute to this. One, the NPSS Free Student Membership Program, which many of you may have taken advantage of. We also have something new, which is just an initiative now. It's a temporary program, which I hope will continue, called the Student Chapter Membership Fee Subsidy Program, which has a very small budget this year and actually hasn't managed to spend any of it, mostly because of COVID. So this is a bit about the history of the Free Student Membership Program. Basically, I proposed this in a motion to our AdCom back in 2016, and they passed it. It says that all graduate and undergraduate students who are members of the IEEE may receive their first year of NPSS membership at our cost for free. The goal, of course, at least my goal in proposing it, but the goal of society is to support student membership around the world, but especially in low-income countries where even our fairly low membership fee may be a significant factor. It allows people to take a chance on the society and see whether they want to hang out in there any longer than the first year. And also my goal, since I'm the chapter coordinator, was to support the growth of student chapters. And as I'll show you, it seems to have had that effect as well. And it's implemented by open links on our students page. So many of you already seen these links. This is our students page. It hides under the community box in this top level menu. And this is what you can read there. This is the part on free memberships. And this is what it says. So if you're already an IEEE student or graduate student member in 2021, we're now in the 2021 membership year. You click the blue box here, and you can add NPSS student membership for free. If you're not yet an IEEE member at all, you can click this other blue box and join the IEEE and simultaneously get free NPSS membership. So this shows the growth since we started that program of IEEE, of NPSS undergraduate student membership in particular, although it promotes graduate students as well. We first posted the membership codes in about April of 2016. You can see prior to that typically we never hit more than 100 undergraduate student members. The number began to increase slowly throughout the 2017 membership year, and probably in the middle of 2018, or the 2018 membership year, which begins in August, the number started to shoot up fairly quickly. So basically someone had noticed and the word had spread that we were offering the free memberships. And as you can see, it's grown very rapidly ever since. You can see these sharp dips in beginning of March every year. The NPSS, the IEEE drops members who don't renew. So that's where you see this kink, and then the membership builds up again until March of the next year when it drops off again and begins to build up again through that year. So you can also see that it was growing very rapidly last year, and this year less rapidly. This corresponds basically to here. So this again, I think, is an effect of COVID, and we'll have to see how it does in future years. But it's interesting to overlay on that the growth of our student chapters, and there at least is an apparent correlation between the two. So the program seems to have two beneficial effects. It's creating more student members, and it's helping to create more student chapters as well. This shows where these student members were in 2019, and the vast majority of them, well, I shouldn't say the vast majority, but the vast plurality of them are in India, and at least in 2019, Sri Lanka was number 6 on this list, with 2,600 graduate student members, 2 graduate student members for a total of 28. I haven't checked these numbers for last year, for 2020, or this year, excuse me. But it is really a worldwide program, and you can see people around the world taking advantage of it. Now, the second program is it's an initiative, it's an experiment. Leaving aside what initiative money means, it means it's not coming out of our main society budget. We can spend certain money that isn't part of our budget based on a small fraction of our reserve money. So this program can provide up to 10 free IEEE and NPSS student memberships. So not only the $5 of an NPSS student membership, but also the $27 of an IEEE student membership. Basically, this is linked to our chapters program now. This is for eligible existing proposed NPSS student chapter, limited to any country eligible for IEEE membership. So e-membership is offered by the IEEE only in lower income countries. In other words, most Western countries do not qualify for this. And those are the countries that are eligible for this program. And there's a process for it. The list has to come from the chapter, in your case, from faculty advisor of the chapter. If there's no chapter yet, from the counselor of the student branch. The details I haven't put on the slide, all the details, because I don't want to complicate things. But the only other point to make is that this is a free one-time benefit that cannot be used for IEEE membership renewal. There are IEEE rules about membership renewals, and free membership renewals simply aren't offered, only free new memberships. So this has a fairly small budget of $2,000 in this year and next year. If it works well, the budget can be increased in further years, which would cover 62 free student memberships based on $32. And I'm hoping to show this program will work, but it only will work if people actually take advantage of it. I think COVID has impacted that. I'd hope to use this to help start new chapters. And so far, it's very difficult to start new chapters when there are no in-person events on campuses. Okay, so I sort of reserved the last part of this talk for just some examples of what other chapters are doing. This is from a student branch and student chapter conference in France at ISC Sapiro. So space, environments, and effects. You can see a fairly large audience. This is a full conference basically put on by the chapter and the branch. And since this includes graduate students who are old enough to drink, you can see there are even cocktails with dinner. This is a different conference put on by one of our student chapters as the contributor to it at the A.D. Patel Institute of Technology in India. It's also a fairly large event in IEEE 18, and we made a small contribution. Basically, we contributed towards it through our contribution to the student chapter itself. And this was, again, I think, not limited to the chapter. I think they said there were about 600 attendees of this conference, probably mostly from Gujarat. And this is now, it's harder to see this because it was hard to fit onto a slide. One of our more recent chapters, formed I think in late 2018, is that the College of Engineering Kurungapalli in India. It's actually a joint chapter, 2 societies, which is permitted. This is our society plus Power Electronics Society. They have a very active student chapter, and they sent me an annual report to cover their events, 3 awards and 35 activities. So each activity had a page here. I just selected a few pages to show. Let me read first our vision. I'm not sure how well you can read it. It says the primary purpose of IEEE Student Branch CEK is to inspire, enable, and empower and energize our student members to enhance their technical interests by providing them a platform to showcase their skills. And they have lots of activities. This is a picture of their campus. This is their annual general meeting. This is the launch of their chapter. This is a technical talk on nuclear power plants. This is a training program they put together. And these are a few more things. This is actually a distinguished lecture that was presented by a member of our society, Dr. Dick Kouzis. He actually was able to travel to Kurungapalli and present this to the chapter as well as to several other universities. This is a seminar on lighting for humanity, poster competition that they put on, a counseling desk involving IEEE activities. This is a Women's Day activity, IEEE orientation, lecture on radioactive waste management. And this was a NPSS membership day they held to recruit new members. Of course, this was all possible last year when on-campus activities were possible. So these are just some of the ideas of things a student chapter can do. And I just wanted to show you that to give you perhaps some ideas. Now, Randima asked me to what you can do in the IEEE when you leave the college. And I'm not sure I can answer that directly because I didn't start the IEEE as an undergraduate. I really began my career after I was a graduate student and got my PhD. So I joined but I thought this would at least tell you some of the avenues of getting involved in the IEEE just based on what I actually did. So the IEEE was not big in my university, at least in my department, the physics department, University of Maryland. Instead, it was the American Physical Society. So I joined the IEEE in 1978 when I became a postdoc at the Naval Research Lab. This is, of course, where I ended up spending my career. I began attending one particular conference, ICOPS, the International Conference on Plasma Science. This was, of course, run by the IEEE and by PSAC, but I didn't necessarily think about that a whole lot. This was simply a useful place to present my work and to learn about the work of other scientists. About 10 years later, I became a guest editor of a special issue on high-power microwave generation. This was what I was working on at the time, of the IEEE Transaction Plasma Science, again, the journal of PSAC. And I became a guest editor because I was active in the field and I was getting recognized in the field, so people asked me to be a guest editor of this particular special issue, attracting papers in this particular topical area. That led to becoming an associate editor, as was mentioned in my introduction. Actually was an associate editor of the transactions for the next 20 years. I eventually took part in a committee that was formed lower down in this chart that restructured the editorial structure, creating a new system, and that's when my associate editorship ended because we went to a system with senior editors. And at that point, I didn't want to be a senior editor covering, it was basically a stronger role to play. So once I was involved with ICOPS, again, you get papers, you get recognized. I was asked to become a session organizer, put together one of the technical sessions at the conference. I first did that in 1990, so that was about 12 years after I first attended. I did that for 3 years in a row, and then once again later, that was putting together sessions on hyper microwave generation, on fast wave microwave devices, and so forth. And also being the session chair for those sessions. That eventually led to being on the program committee of the entire conference. which I did in 93, 94, 97. I became the technical chair of the conference in 2011 and did service as the treasurer and financial chair in 2014. That's continuing my involvement basically in the conference that we put on annually by our technical committee of our society. Now the technical committee is run by an executive committee. That's its governing board under the society. So I was elected to the governing board of the technical committee in 1990. It's called the XCOM Executive Committee. I had a 3-year term in 90, another 3-year term in 94, another 3-year term in 98, each time needing to be elected by the members of that committee. When my term ended in 92, I became the secretary for a couple of years and then the vice chair for a couple of years. So that extended to the end of my second term. And I guess I did nothing for 1 year, rejoined, and then at the end of my third term, became secretary, and one thing led to another. I'm still secretary 20 years later. So the secretary doesn't run the committee, the chair does, but the secretary basically does all the ways and means of the committee. I do the minutes of the committee, I organize the meetings. I basically function as the institutional memory of the committee, because every 2 years there's a new chair, but if I'm always the secretary, I can tell the chair what to do. So it's rewarding. I enjoy it very much. So now getting back to the governing board of the entire society, the AdCom or Administrative Committee is this governing board. I became an elected member of a 4-year term in 2004. You have to be off for 1 year, so I was reelected in 2009 and one more time in 2014. And then I decided that was enough times. I have to let younger people do the job. But at the end of my first term in 2008, I became the coordinator for our Distinguished Lecturers Program and our Chapters Program. The first position lasted in 2012 when the president decided to split this into 2 functions. And I continued just as chapter coordinator. I've been doing that now for the past 12 years. And finally, so these are all activities more or less at the society level. At the level of the entire IEEE, you have to, if you're president of society, you move up into the IEEE. And there are lots of functions up there. I never was president of society, but as an IEEE fellow, I could serve on the fellow committee. I was appointed to that committee, and that's the committee that chooses the new fellows every year. So I did that between 2008 and 2011, served 4 years there. And that's sort of the path, a path through the various parts of technical activities and professional activities in the IEEE. Now, if you start on the MGA side, you can get involved with the section and things on that level that aren't linked directly to any technical committee. And that, you know, if you're starting with in India, for instance, or Sri Lanka or some particular country, there's another path up through the volunteering activities on the MGA side going into section related activities. So I'm just telling you what I did, but it shows the various ways you can get involved, and these are the ways I got involved. So let me just show a couple more slides. Why join the IEEE? Well, if you're an IEEE member, you're a member of the world's largest scientific and technical organization, which has some prestige and some value. You also get subscriptions to the monthly IEEE magazine Spectrum and the Institute. And you get low rates to many publications and the conference registration for any IEEE conference. That's what you receive as a member. There are other things you get as a member, but I'm listing some principal ones. As a member of the NPSS in particular, not just the IEEE, you get electronic access to our journals and conference records, which are very useful. I take advantage of it all the time now that I'm no longer working. I no longer have free access to the IEEE Explorer, for instance, but I can get anything in the way of our journals and conference records simply because I'm a member of the society. You get significant discounts of registration to our conferences, reduced rate on print subscriptions, which you probably don't need. You get our newsletter, which should be of some interest. And as I say, your chapter can actually publish in the newsletter, and we'd be interested in getting that. And it gives you opportunities for networking and professional service and volunteering service that can greatly benefit your career. Getting involved in the IEEE and the society is one way to get recognized, and it's one way to network. It's one way to basically take advantage of society to help yourself. So why become an IEEE volunteer? I think I've already said some of that. But first, it helps our profession. The IEEE has a small staff, about 1,000 people that run this very large organization, but it's really a volunteer-run organization. And the conferences, journals, societies, and chapters are all run by volunteers, and they need volunteers to do their business. So that's one reason to get involved, but it also is a reason, there's a personal reason that any individual might want to get involved. There are many training, learning, and leadership opportunities. It basically can take you where you want to go. It allows you to stay on top of scientific and technical advancements. It can provide professional recognition, such as by our awards, and certainly by getting involved in these things, people see what you're doing and you become recognized. You get to work with exceptionally talented people, and I really mean that. The people that get involved in the IEEE and the NPSS are people that are worth working with and they're very interesting to work with, which of course also means it's a fantastic networking opportunity. And at least I can certainly speak from personal experience, it gives you a real sense of accomplishment. I found great enjoyment in doing it, and I hope it will be for you as well. So that concludes my slides. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, sir. IEEE and NPSS Student Branch Chapter University of Moratuwa won't be present today without your support, sir. Thank you very much for your support, and thank you very much for your very interesting and informative introductory session. So next up, we have the Q&A session. So you can ask questions through the chat. So almost we got around 4 to 5 questions. So first question is there any NPSS volunteering opportunities that at SBC level or after SBC level? If so, how we take part in such NPSS volunteering activities like in University in Alexandria, which you mentioned during the presentation? Over to you, sir.
Well, I'm not sure I have a great answer to that question, but the problem is basically that in the real world is a very large place, and if you're not near, for instance, one of our conferences, it's very hard to get involved in our conference unless you have the resources to travel. There are certainly, our conferences basically welcome student participation. We always have awards for student travel. I think all of our conferences do that. If you can attend our conference, you can get involved with it. There are committees there, you have to volunteer for some of those committees, but there are committees that do various things, like help promote the conferences, help publicize them. If you're near where one of our conferences is, there are local activities that can get involved. You know, the activities that take place at that particular place. There's always a local organizing committee for a conference. But it's hard to start at the student level. I mean, that's why there's student chapters. It's a way to get involved. And you can also, many places have section chapters, which are basically the next level up if you're no longer a student, no longer linked to a university. And section chapters, I haven't dealt with them in this talk, but they often host their own lectures. Often they have dinner meetings. They can host other activities such as, I think in some areas they've done things like visit the local nuclear power station, but basically, at least they're regionally based. So if you have a section chapter, there's a way to get involved directly at that level. To get involved with the broader PSAC, for instance, well, we just passed a motion to add student representatives to PSAC. So our XCOM will begin to have student members beginning appointing them next year. But you know, worldwide, we'll start adding 1 student representative on our 18-member student PSAC XCOM next year. And once again, it will probably be graduate students because, you know, that's simply the most likely path for getting involved. Once you're a graduate student, you may have funds to present papers at conferences, whether they're section conferences or PSAC conferences, either way. But I can't really tell you the best path because the geographic aspect is so important. If you were living near Washington and we had a conference in Washington, D.C., it'd be very easy to find ways to participate directly. But this is a new virtual world, but still there's a physical aspect to it that we can't wish away. For instance, you're 12.5 time zones away from me, which means I'm talking in the early morning and you're getting near bedtime. So I don't know the full answer, but at least those are a few comments.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And the second question is kind of a general question. What is the procedure to apply travel grants for NPSS conferences?
To apply what kind of grant?
Travel grants.
Student grants?
Yeah.
Travel grants. Okay. Well, first you have to submit a paper to the conference. So that basically you have to, normally papers that are at one of our conferences are research papers. So if you have a research project that is worth presenting at a conference, You have to write an abstract and submit the abstract to the conference when it calls for papers. And again, you can look at our conferences list on their website. Every conference has a process to submit abstracts. Your abstracts are reviewed by a committee. If the abstract is accepted, then you're invited to not invited, but you're welcome to present your paper at the conference. Now, if you're a working scientist, you probably have a research grant and you can use research funds to go to the conference. If you're a graduate student, perhaps your professor's research grant can do that. But usually the conference will also have on their conference website a link to apply for a student travel grant. And then there's a committee that works with the conference to choose how to distribute the available money for the student travel grants. So it's based, often they'll need a letter of recommendation for your faculty advisor, and then it's based on the value of your research and how much, and based on need, where you are and do you need assistance to travel to the conference. But once again, well, first of all, right now, all the conferences are virtual, so student travel grants aren't very important. But also, again, in the real world, it costs a lot of money to travel from one side of the world to the other side of the world. So if we have a conference, like when we had a conference in Turkey, even student travel grant from the US to Turkey was a lot of money. So mostly those grants probably favored people who could afford to travel with the help of a grant. They couldn't pay the entire cost of traveling from the US or from India to Turkey because the budget is only so big. The student travel grants actually come out of the conference budget. The conference budget comes out of the registration fees. So the only way to put more money into one pot would be to raise the cost for everyone. There's no separate pot of money. The conference has to exist sort of as its own financial entity.
Yes, sir. Thank
Okay.
you. So next question is from Shehani. So how can I join NPSS Young Professionals Committee? Is it possible to join these days?
Okay. I'm not sure I have a great answer to that as well, but at least I can talk about the subject. First of all, the way a young professional is defined is not quite the same as a student. A young professional by the IEEE definition is any IEEE member within the first 15 years after the first professional degree. By professional degree, they mean undergraduate degree. So a young professional is defined not as an IEEE student member, but a graduate student member and up in the first 15 years after they became, before they got their bachelor's degree. So you can't really join you are a young professional, but that's not like there's young professional committee. The committee, which is a committee of the AdCom, is a organization of AdCom members who promote young professional activities. And for instance, on PSAC, which is our technical committee, we promote young professional activities based on our XCOM as well. We have a subcommittee of our XCOM that at every conference puts on a young professional activity, which means, for instance, it's a special session of a conference that allows young professionals to make presentations that may be to involve assisting them in finding their first job or a new job, because there'll be employers there as well. There may be lectures that are, how do you raise funds for your own research? So we put on young professional activities at our conference, but it's not like you join to become a part of the young professional committee. It's our young professional committee that reaches out to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And next we have, sir, is there any chance of undergraduates from Sri Lanka engaging in a publication of a research paper in the publications or journals that we have mentioned in the presentation? So can we join with these publications and journals as Sri Lankans?
Well, I guess the first answer is, of course, but the papers are judged by the research. In every professional journal, every scientific journal that I'm familiar with has reviewers. So you can't publish when you want to. You submit papers and reviewers decide whether it's of sufficient quality, sufficient novelty to be worth publishing in that journal. So it's probably very difficult for a student, unless they're working closely with a faculty member. Now, if there's a faculty member that has a project that involves you, then that's a way you can be a co-author of the faculty's publication, which might be of enough general interest to be published in a journal. It'd be very hard for a student to become the sole author or first author of a publication like that, but not impossible. It's just a practical problem. how do you do research that is novel, that is valuable, that is significant enough that a panel of reviewers will decide that that journal should publish it. I will mention as well, though, that I mentioned our newsletter. And if a student has a project they'd like to write up and put in our newsletter, that's something completely different, and it's not refereed in any formal sense. If it's of interest and general interest, we'd be happy to publish it.
Yes, sir. So next we have, so what are the benefits that we can experience with free student membership of NPSS?
What? I'm sorry. Say that again, please.
What are the benefits that we can experience with free student membership of NPSS?
Well, I tried to already answer that. Basically, the benefits come from being a member. You become a free student member simply because we offer that as a path to membership, where we subsidize the first year of membership. I tried to tell you why you might become a member of the NPSS. I mean, if you're at your particular university, once you're an NPSS member, you're automatically a member of the student chapter. But that doesn't mean you need to be a member to take part in the student chapter activities. So your student chapter activities, anyone at your university can take advantage of. But if they want to be formally a part of it, if they want to be, for some reason, for instance, the next chair of the chapter, or the treasurer or secretary or something, for that you must be a member. But one of the things you get as an NPSS member, which you're getting now for free for the first year, is, as I also said, you get our newsletter, you get online access to anything in IEEE Explore that we put there, which means all of our conference proceedings going back decades, really, to any of our journals. You can download papers for free simply by being an NPSS member, even if you became one by being a free member. So it's really an introductory offer to get you involved, but it's the involvement that matters.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And next we have how to apply to be a distinguished lecturer with NPSS.
Okay, well, we have a process. We have a we have a committee of the AdCom that runs the Distinguished Lecturers Program. It's chaired by someone named Dan Fleetwood. He's a professor at Vanderbilt, I think it is. So Dan Fleetwood basically organized the program. He has to approve lectures that involve expenditure of money. So if a lecturer is asked to go somewhere, again, in this virtual day, it doesn't take money. I don't need money to go to, but when I went to Texas Tech to give a lecture, I had to basically say I've been invited to give a lecture at Texas Tech, and Dan Fleetwood would say, okay, you can spend the money it takes to go there and you'll be reimbursed by the society. So that's his function, but he doesn't really choose the distinguished lecturers themselves. We have 8 technical committees, and the technical committee chairs, these are elected chairs of the technical committees, nominate people to be distinguished lecturers based on their reputation and profession. So if you're known in the profession, you would basically contact the chair of that technical committee that you're involved with and say to him or her that I'd like to be a distinguished lecturer, would you consider me? And they would have a discussion, and basically if the chair of that technical committee agrees, he would forward that person's name to Dan Fleetwood. Dan Fleetwood would say, okay, if you want to be a distinguished lecturer, please send me the name of your lectures and abstracts and give me some personal information to post for a bio, and then you go up on our website. That's the procedure.
Okay, sir. Are there any questions? Okay, we have another question. Sir, as you think, where is the world to be led with the rapidly expanding scientific knowledge, including knowledge on nuclear and plasma science?
Again, I'm having a little trouble here. Can you say that once more, please?
As you think, to where is world to be led with this rapidly expanding scientific knowledge, including knowledge on nuclear and plasma science?
I'm trying to understand what exactly you're asking.
You can see the chat, and
let me see
the basic idea is
okay, can I see the chat in the window here? Let's see here. I'm not sure where exactly it's hiding.
Okay, yes.
We close this window and close this window. And see, let me stop sharing my screen because that's probably complicating things. Okay, now I can see a little bit more.
Okay.
Good.
The last question.
The last question. Where the world is headed with its rapid expanding scientific knowledge? Well, that's, of course, a very complicated question. Basically, okay, you're sort of asking where is scientific knowledge taking the world, maybe. And it's doing many things. One thing it's doing is leading to increased wealth in the world, increased development around the world. There's a whole lot of the world that basically is still far from where the latest modern part of the world is, and where, in essence, the growth of knowledge is helping lead to further development throughout the world, I think. And we don't solve all the political problems of the world, which are many, but certainly the advance of scientific knowledge has helped medicine. It's helped many aspects, travel, communications. These are all coming out of scientific research and development. Right now with COVID, every part of the IEEE, I think, is seeing how that can help with COVID. And that includes nuclear and plasma sciences, as well as many other parts of the IEEE, because it's now a worldwide priority. Everyone's trying to find a way to help. But research is a mixed bag. It helps things. It can also create problems. A lot of research is involved in weapons, for instance, and that part of research perhaps doesn't help humanity very much, but it's kind of inevitable. When knowledge advances, it has good effects and bad effects. Knowledge leads to industry, and industry leads to development, and development leads to jobs and prosperity. So that's part of the chain of events that starts with the things our society does. I don't really know how better to answer that.
Okay, thank you, sir. And are there any questions? Okay. So with that, we have reached the end of the question and answer session. So before winding up the session, shall we take a virtual group photo of this remarkable occasion? And can everyone turn on the camera? And yes.
Yeah, I don't see all the pictures right now. I still see the questions and answers. So I think you have to take that off the screen to see all the pictures.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, mostly their names, not pictures. But I just did a screen capture also, so I can see who's here.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. This is the first lecture of this exact kind I've given. I've given some technical lectures over the web, but I will consider doing this for more of our chapters by offering it to them instead of waiting for you to ask me. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. With that, we have reached the end of the session. Thank you very much, Dr. Stephen H. Golden, for joining us and sharing your extremely interesting experiences and knowledge with us. Thank you, Madam Dr. Shara Damayanti, the advisor of IEEE Nuclear and Plasma Science Society, University of Moratuwa. And thank you everyone for asking questions and joining us today. Wish you safety and good health.
Thank you.